وخمار شوي area crossroads.
Artanian should let everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Walk the Crossroads. I understand it's been a while, but here again is your host, Padre Gossi, aka Shadowed Sin, and tonight we're going to be discussing the basics of Starship models, and I'm going to be talking about a few example models for you. Tonight's episode will be a bit short as I'm still acclimating to the return to the UK, but overall we are doing quite well, moving forward on the threefold project and also with the lore behind technological energetic kinesis, aka tech. Now, let us begin. Now, back in our original overview of starships in general, we mentioned that there are three specific types of, or classifications, right? Or basically we call them types because we like the classes to refer to the forms of model of ship that are found in this. So among the three recognized types of starship, transport, strike, and capital, there are numerous classes which designate a ship's purpose and design within a fleet or as an individual ship. Modifications can be conducted to a ship throughout extensive modification and can be quite expensive and timely. Most ships are modified moderately and often a capacity that will not endanger the purpose. This is an aspect of the moderation or the mod system in our game, which we will discuss at a later point. It is still in the works, but is up on our website for people who are testing the game currently. Alright, let's talk a bit about transport craft, alright? So, transport craft specifically are their most common form in the Sea of Stars and come in a variety of classes, the smallest being shuttles, which can be docked with larger ships and even for transportation between colonies and worlds. And there's much larger ships including the Starliner and also the Cog class. So again, the smallest is the shuttle class, the smallest and least open of the transport craft. The shuttles often carry only a maximum of 10 individuals and small amounts of cargo at a time. They're not really meant for long term. That's more of for the next level, which is the Ketch. The Ketch class is a small personal vessel used by the wealthy and others to transport their own personnel outside of traditional shuttles. Ketches can be slightly larger than shuttles and yet are smaller than Starliners. They're often fitted with two solar sails, allowing a middle factor speeds. Factors, for a link factor 4 to 5. The Cog, which is one of the larger of the transport classes, are much larger. They carry incredible amounts of cargo, several kilo livres at a given time. That's basically several thousand kilograms at a given time. A Starliner are, again, they're the second largest, and they can be one of the most modifiable. Starliners are, as noted, one of the largest of the found in the Triad and can hold a total of several hundred personnel at a given time. They can transport hundreds of passengers as well, and some are outfitted as exploration vessels or as mobile labs. So now we're going to discuss two small examples from this particular classification, and that's going to be the Hermes Shuttle, the Nar Transport, and the Athena Explorer. So the Hermes Shuttle was one of the first interplanetary vehicles developed just the fall of the First Dynasty. After expanding the map of the Triad and later, the Avalon Cluster are an entire series of shuttle designs passed through a rigorous test of the Middle Era wars. Now, every lore entry for these particular ships they tend to be slightly short, maybe a few paragraphs long. They have a little bit of stats, and for example, it gives you an idea what it looks like. The standard Hermes shuttle design is roughly 15 by 50 mevres. It's about 15 by 50 meters. We're just noting that because, again, we have the mevre, which is part of the imperial system of measurements, which we'll cover at some point. It's generally shaped like a wedge, with wings extending out from the nose and the cockpit form into a rough shape of a chopped arrowhead. Okay, a small fin exists at the back, and 20 mevres from the cockpit is a door which extends down into a boarding ramp to allow in passengers. Okay, Hermes shuttles are found throughout the entire Avalon Cluster. They are mostly produced in Throne on the planet of Alice. A general cockpit storage section near the back, and then a passenger deck are the major sections. It has defense rockets and anti-targeting jammers. Its other defenses include gray outer armor, nanoplasmic defensive skin. It can do full fusion speed only. It's not meant to enter sail shift. The Nar is a large, known also as the Nar Trader Transport. They have been moving things for centuries. They're one of the oldest known. They've existed since the advent of the three systems era itself. Based upon the earlier NAR designs, apparently there's been 20 different designs of NAR, but easily recognized workhouse in the mercantile world. Even members of the criminal cartels have found themselves readily using the NAR for many reasons. Much like the Athenian Explorer, the NAR is heavily armored. Some call it the Space Rhino for its toughness, and the ship with a focus on being able to stand the dangers of not only space, but the denizens of the Sea of Stars themselves. It's a COG class. Its general deployment is found throughout the entire triad. It's mostly found in the Rook system. Its name suggests it's likely built on Askir. It has 3 decks and 1 extensive multi-layered cargo hold. It has targeting jammers that's the only form of armament it has. Its defense include medium gray auto armor, nanoplasmatic skin, anti-projectile defenses, reinforced heavy plasteel armor. It has a half fusion drive. It's not very fast. It can reach a 3/4 fusion when in max speed, when not fully loaded, and it can reach furling factor 5, but it prefers traveling at about furling factor 3. It's a very rotund vessel. It's a long range. It's mostly built for long range transport. It is much more than typical 25 memories and about 15 memories wide. Its oval-shaped rounds at the bottom that appears like an old ship hull from the seafaring vessel of old Askir. Even in the top tier, even with it has kind of a teardrop shape too. So it's not like kind of like the typical shape of ships. It's literally like a fat teardrop. And then it has kind of a tripart design with its sails. There are total of 3 decks, as mentioned. One houses the crew and galleon engineering. The second top deck is dedicated to the bridge and sensor systems. And the third deck is a larged-out cargo hold, which can hold goods and be modified and acts as a heated or cool storage. Our final example from the transport craft is the Athena Explorer. It is found throughout the entire triad and even into the North Reaches. It's found built throughout the entire Avalon Cluster. It has 6 decks with bridge and command, tactical station, a large lab to test and study discoveries, full crew quarters and quarters for passengers, specially isolated cargo section for dangerous materials. Its armament include targeting jammers and defensive rockets, medium gray auto armor, nanoplasmic defensive skin, and anti-projectile defenses for defense, and has full drive speed, max fusion shift, and furling factor 3 as its max sailing speed. It's not very fast. It's very big, though. The Athena Explorer was developed as a nomadic laboratory that could be used to study the anomalies that plague the depths of known space in the Sea of Stars. As its uses grew, the houses of the nobility began to employ the Athena Explorer not only as a mobile lab, but also as a roving hospital ship to assist with the casualties often faced in the front of the marches when the Voidkin raids strike. Other than its status in the medical and biological field, the Light Exploration's Land Explorer. It's also known as basically the LEL. It's developed a reputation for solid ability for transport and also uses reinforced armor transport. So it's very useful for moving not only your goods, for going out and exploring things, but also it's good for moving your troops, in secondary convoys. The LEL Athena Explorer possesses a wedge-shaped similar to that of the Hermes shuttle, and instead of having separate wings, it looks like one elongated flying wing. The ship is often considered by some the strange compared to the standard pillar shape favored by many shipbuilders in the Artificers Guild. The flying wing design means that the hull itself looks more like a cone in the front. At the end of the cone appeared halfway out of the middle of the ship itself. So what happens is you have the long flying wing, and then the rest of the ship itself kind of comes out as like this kind of square rounded cone that pushes out of the ship, and then the boosters are located at the back. Okay. Now we're going to talk about strike craft. There are only 4 general classes of strike craft. Combat craft are often the first line of defense and offense for fleets and stationary space positions. One of the few types of ship that can easily enter and leave orbit, strike craft can be used across the triad and beyond as a means of raiding and striking out enemies from a distance. Most, if not all, strike craft are charged rather than holding their own AFD engines. Those who do not possess an AFD are known as range fighters versus the normal patrol fighters, which make up the primary line of defense for capital craft and space stations. Known classes include range fighters, which we just mentioned they're short range. They have to be charged. They do not have their own AFD, and they can only get about half fusion drive at a given speed. Patrol fighters are short-range ships which must recharge at regular intervals to allow energy from a larger AFD to regenerate their own smaller fusion engines. However, they can go out at longer periods of time than range fighters, so they can actually go out for maybe a day or two in long patrols. They still have to come back and recharge eventually, though. Gunships, which are much more independent, are a heavily armored corvette, which are capable of transporting troops and items out into the battlefield. That means they often serve as support in combat and are often used in atmospheric and base warship. They're the equivalent of kind of our modern gunship helicopters at the point. They're larger than a typical fighter. They can transport multiple personnel, and they can go out for prolonged periods of time. Like corvettes are lightly armored patrol craft that can act as support combat vessel for strike or capital, and can even be outfitted with solar sails to achieve furling factor 1 in travel. So they're great for long-term raids. Alright, now let's take a look at a few of these ships. The first one we're going to discuss is going to be the Falcon Z13, once the page loads. Okay, here we go. Its full name is the Falcon 0G13. The Falcon 0G13 rangefighter was first developed in the latter years of the Void War as the battle spread across the Marcher Line. The larger heavy fighter was mostly created to do long-drawn sorties against the enemy deep in the drifting Cooper belt of the border marches. After the Void War, the Falcon Z13 became a major tool in the natural defenses of many houses. Okay, so it is also a modern symbol of power to dissidents that seize the fighters and use them in inter-system raids against enemy houses. It's a range fighter. It's found throughout the entire triad, so it's a workhorse. Many of the families love it. It is mass-produced across the entire Avalon Cluster. No specific family that with artificer connections is the only one that makes it. It can seat 2-piece person with storage for long ship journeys. It's a multi-projectile heavy guns and then 4 heavy payload torpedoes. It has nanoplasm armor and anti-rocket decoys, and its fastest speed is half fusion. The Falcon Z0G13 is known as having a distinct bird of prey design. This comes from because of the V-shaped wings that curve in and upward dip outward from the cockpit of the machine. On either end of the wing is a stabilizing thruster and a rounded 4-part torpedo launcher. The wings themselves have a wingspan of about 15.5 MeV. The cockpit is completely pressurized and includes several amenities, including a small sleeping area, which includes a double wide bunk, a small cooking station, storage for food, and restroom equipment. The actual cockpit itself is a single file double seat. Navigation in the front, weapons in the back. The fighter's body itself is shaped like a small block with primary AFD boosters in the front on either side. Alright. Let's talk about the Phalanx. The Phalanx Guard is different than the Falcon in that it's a patrol fighter. It's made for small sorties or defensives kept within the fleet where it can actually, pull up and recharge as necessary. The thing about this is that may also makes them cheaper to produce because you don't have to stick an AFD core inside of them. Phalanx Guard Fighter, also known as the Phalanx Offensive Guardian, is one of the long line of fighters developed by collective houses seeking to build a mass usage fighter across the triad. This is an example of what we call a collective within the guilds, which are a group of houses or individual masters who have got together and have decided to propagate one specific design. Many in the Artificers Guild who participate in the creation of the Phalanx Offensive Guardian are part of a group within the guild known as the Phalanx Collective. The circle of individuals who make up the collective often do their best to create their own take on the Guardian. Historically, the Guardian has been mainly used by starborn navies as a means of defending their colonies from corsairs and by patrol fleets for advanced assaults. Their short-range means they can only launch in a careful capacity, meaning that the Phalanx is designed specifically for speed runs and only done in concert with carrier-class vessels from a ship of the line or from a nearby outpost. Basically, do not launch your patrol fighters or specifically your Phalanx Guard unless you're actually going in for a hit. These are great for if you're dropping down on an opponent with your ship of the line and you need to harry them as your Chevaliers get into position or your heavier strike craft get into position. The Phalanx Guard is a trapezoid-shaped ship with many of the Monterey brick for its solid block construct. A total of 3.5 memories thick, 16 memories long, the wings themselves form an atypical V shape from the 10 memory wide front section where the cockpit is fitted. The wings themselves edge at 70-degree angle from the cockpit toward the 12 memory wide back area. The boosters to the fusion drive are flat and meld directly into the back of the machine itself. Between the boosters and below just a pair of stabilizing fins. And on the end of these fins are a pair of rocket thruster engines, which can allow, more specific, maneuvering as necessary. The cockpit itself is squarish in design. Okay. The next one we're going to be talking about is the only current active light, well, we have several different light corvettes, but it's the one that's currently listed in the wiki. The Kestrel Special Operation Light Corvette. This is the third iteration. It's also known as the Kestrel X3. The Kestrel is a light, quick corvette designed for versatility and application. Its armament alone was designed for multiple purposes, leading from ground assaults to acting as heavy support in fighter strikes. The Kestrel, for this reason, is known as the Special Operations Corvette for the very reason it is favored heavily by special combat divisions of many a house guard. The reason? Not only does it have a heavy multi-gun turret, fantastic for ground fire when dropping off a squad or two, but its speed of furling factor 1 makes it useful in complex drops on unsuspecting targets from a short distance, but far away enough to be out of sensor range. So, the nice thing about the Kestrel is you can load it up with your special operations member of the house guard, select a target. You can be maybe a parsec out or so, just out of the range, and then you can hit furling factor 1, sail in, hit the planet or the colony, and board without them really being noticed. It's great for special operations. The Kestrel Special Operations Light Corvette, or Kestrel X3, is the third iteration of its original design, denoted by the 3 in the shortened name. Lengthwise, the entire ship is roughly 25 memories long and half of the widest, with 10 memories in width. The widest area is rounded rectangular shape with an elongated deck. The back area is set for storage and for personal ornament. Okay, let's just kind of go to the facts. I don't know if you guys want to hear exactly what it looks like. We'll include a link to the ships in tonight's episode description down the diddly-do. Okay, it's mostly found in the Rook and Sentinel systems. It's a more recent design to arise during the 3 systems era. It has a 2-person cockpit, a cabin for 2 squads, and a storage and engineering room. Has heavy multi-guns, multi-fire rocket pods, and light rail guns. This thing is armed to the teeth. The medium gray add a skin, anti-rocket, or torpedo countermeasure decoys. Its preferred cruising speed is half fusion, and it can travel furling factor 1. The final starcraft we're going to be looking at tonight is specifically the Long Spear HG, also known as the Long Spear Heavy Gunship, first iteration, the HG-1. The constant state of warfare in the modern era of the 3 systems has brokered a new age of mentality of weapon design. The existence of the Kestrel X3 has only encouraged new designs to spread among the various factors of the Artificers Guild. From this ongoing struggle was born the Long Spear Heavy Gunship, a modern design that mixes troop transport, as most modern Corvettes designs often do, and heavy combat support. In battle fleets, the heavy gunship often plays a role that may be taken by light cruisers such as clippers or even brigantines in combat. A long spear's position, thus, is multi-purpose within a battle fleet. Not as fast as the traditional patrol or range fighter, the long spear is named for the ancient lances wielded by famed medieval cavalry. Used in long-thrusting offenses to smash the enemy, long spears are considered by many tacticians to be excellent anti-fighter countermeasures as well as strict support when conducting a range fighter raid. In atmospheric combat, they are used in heavy air offensive against enemy targets. Unlike the Kestrel, the increased firepower and size means the long spear is generally preferred for direct rather than covert offenses. The long spear gunship is found mostly in the Throne and Rook systems. Its newer designs become popular in this 3 systems era, so it's becoming kind of a big deal. It has a central cockpit, a transport room for 1 combat squad, crew quarters for 7 full-time crew, so it can actually go out on long shifts if necessary, and it can be equipped with a sailing. This one actually can travel. This is a bit of a rarity for Corvettes. And its weapons include heavy missile batteries, 2 broadside torpedo tubes, and a medium railgun turret. It has medium gray add a skin, anti-rocket, and torpedo countermeasure decoys. Its General speed is a quarter fusion, and it can do furling factor 1. Alright, now we're going to talk about capital craft. Capital craft are some of the most complex there are. Like most, though, they only have about 4 different variants for classes. The first being the brigantine, but we're going to get to that in a second. The largest of the craft, and often holding a large crew of anywhere from 30 to a few hundred. Most capital craft are used in naval defense forces and often carry a full complement of combat soldiers to defend against boarding. Capital craft generally carry heavy weaponry and often do quite a bit of damage. However, heavy guns require extreme amounts of energy to fire, target, and cool while in combat, while also stabilizing the ship's position in combat. This means that unlike fighters, a ship cannot enter 3/4 or full shift when firing their heavy guns. So, you need, when you're preparing to fight with your capital craft, you need to make sure that you're aligned, that the impact of the recoil from the guns themselves are not going to create a force to send you off. So you've got to make sure your power is online, your guns are not overheating internally, and that you're not draining your power sources. Okay, for those of you who may consider mods down the road. Okay. Here are the 4 classes. The brigantine. The brigantine class is a light frigate used in escort and general patrol missions. They are often 3 heavy guns on either broadside and 5 light guns. Their general speed is between 5 to 6 in max, furling factor, and they often possess 3 solar sails. And unlike earlier, actually, we're not going to do that. I was going to do the example right away, but I think it'd be better to describe the specific classes first. The Clipper class is a medium frigate designed for speed and long-distance travel. They are lightly armed and medium armored, making them good long-distance patrol and exploratory vessels. Their speed is due to 6 solar sails, and they are equipped with that. Clippers are one of the fastest. Only ships of the line can actually meet their general speed. Clippers are different than brigantine in that brigantine are designed as patrol and escort vessels. They're meant to stay within a given border, whereas a clipper is a long-range patrol. It's the one you send out on the borders. They're more of a picket ship. The ships that you put out on long-range, sensitive missions near your border or just beyond the border, you want to make sure. So these are the ones that are going to go out to the very edge of the marcher line and are going to be scanning for possible strikes from the Voidkin, or even Corsairs from within the marches. Ship of the line is a heavy cruiser that often is the lead ship in an attack fleet or squadron of ships. Ships of the line are so named as they form the spine of the general broadside combat found within larger space battles. They also carry 3 chevaliers and a complement of fighters if necessary. Note, this will reduce crew complement. They generally have a standard 4 sails of capital craft. The final one is the carrier. Carriers are the largest craft found in the trad and one of the slowest. Carriers are massive ships which can take years to complete and generally become the flagship of their given houses. So unique and powerful they are that they are rarely put into service unless for defense or for prolonged warfare, as they are an active base of operations for multiple reasons. They generally have 8 sails and a max speed of factor 7. That's actually pretty fast, but they're pretty they're huge. That's a lot of energy, even just to move it outside of, sail shift. Okay, let's talk about our first brigantine. This is the Iblis Demon Light Frigate. It's found throughout the entire trad, even the North Reaches. It's an age-old design with origins on Duzok and earlier designs from Irkal. 5 decks, primary command deck, 2 decks dedicated to crew quarters, 2 tactical deck, 2 arms bays, a large cargo bay, a shuttle bay for small transport, a deck for troop transport. It holds general complement of 70 to 180 crew, and that includes marine squadrons. It has 6 railgun turrets, 6 heavy gun batteries, and 4 heavy torpedo tubes. It has a medium gray auto armor, heavy nanoplasmatic layer, and 10 anti-rocket countermeasures. Okay. Many from the lands of Duzok name it the Infidel Killer, a name given to it by the warriors of the Sam Emirates. For the brigantine-class warships can show the ferocity of an Iblis light frigate when in battle. It is for this reason that the Iblis is known throughout the triad as the Demon class, because of the almost twisted, elegant design shape it holds when drifting through space. The Corsairs of the Borawatu Freehold often favor the Iblis, are not at all uncommon sight at the shipyards of Irkal and Duzok. What many do not know is that the modern Iblis is the 15th rendition of a much older design dating back to the years just following the First Systems War. When the furling factor was first exposed, the first brigantine class were often made from early models of Iblis frigates. Its very size has shifted generally between the modern length of 67 memories to a full length of 72 memories at any given time. The standard design of the Iblis light frigate is reminiscent of the ancient Dao or Uru ships, vessels that we call Narak and Duzak. These large, long-hulled ships with their sleek, narrow design, modern artificers set a standard of 67 memories with a maximum width of 19 memories, is one of the larger frigates currently employed across the Triad. The hull itself is shaped like an elongated cylinder with a flat end where two large fusion boosters set directly in the back of the hull. This elevated portion of the hull is 2 decks high and compromises the primary bridge and the engineering portion of the entire ship. Many compare it to the age-old poop deck on ancient sailing vessels. 3 underdecks, mainly thus composed of crew quarters, the guest quarters on deck 3, and then troop transport on deck 4. Deck 5 is mostly filled with large consecutive cargo holds. The holds are capable of being converted into shuttle bays and have large series of pressurized doors on the right and left side of the actual bulkhead bays themselves. The next ship we'll be talking about is an example of a clipper ship. That is the Durga War Cruiser. Deployed primarily in the Rook system and found throughout the Throne Marches line and the Outer Rim. It was primarily made on its home regions include Narak 2 and the Marichistan sector. 5 decks total, a full navigational battle bridge, central engineering room, a habitat deck for crew quarters, a galley and guest transport, combat deck for weapons, and ammo storage along with troop transport. It's also got an extended shuttle bay and cargo bay. It has 6 railgun turrets, 4 heavy gun batteries, 2 light gun batteries, and 2 heavy torpedo tubes. The Durga War Cruiser is a sleek Viper-like ship that was created as a show of power by the Empire Vish from Narak 2. In the years after its creation, which many assume was during the Void War, but the ship is likely far older. Named after a warrior goddess, or some say a saint of the Creed, the Durga Cruiser is often known for its black hull and 6 curved sails that connect above and below the hull. As a Clipper-class ship, the Durga is designed as a deep-range vessel that could slip quickly at high furling factors behind enemy defenses and then unleash a quick raid before reaction must be mustered. As a ship, the Durga has gained itself a harsh reputation as a ship often used by raiders and even pirates in war. Few ships in the Triad can hold its bloody reputation or infamy in battle. Quick turns, valor, and glory are often attached to the ship, known as the Sword of Kala, by the warriors that man its decks. A Durga War Cruiser has developed with a unique and often alien design. The inspiration is often said to be a simple merchant vessel, the Uru, which itself plied the ancient oceans of Narak 2. However, along the sleek pointed hull at the back near the traditional raised bridge and engineering section are 4 great blade-like fins. The length of each of the internal length is 56 memories, which makes it slightly smaller than a brigantine-class warship. The fins are roughly 5 memories in width, and they end in a point at 15 memories of their total 20. So they're about 20 memories long, and they have a point on their end, and can be used to extend and retract the rounded masts that connect the unfurl the solar sails. These 4 fins are said to appear like 4 cross katars or push daggers. Some claim the blade-like fins are actually sharpened and can be used in ramming or direct slicing movements if pushed to the limit. When it sails unfurled, the sails extend along the 4 ribbed masts extend from the base of the ship and top of each of the 4 katar fins. Finally, a second pair unfurl underneath the horizontal side of the mast. Alright, let's talk about an example of the ship of the line, the Anat Dreadnought. Okay, the Anat Dreadnought is found across the Triad with heavy production in Throne and Rook. It was developed on the planets of Aru and Nerkal with a heavy support from Duzak. It has 7 decks. It has a primary battle command deck, fully equipped engineering machinist deck, fully established medical and science deck, 2 decks dedicated to crew quarters, with a 4th section on the final deck given to the guest or VIP quarters. A fully stocked battle deck with torpedoes, rockets, and various forms of torpedo. The bottom deck is 3 times as large as the top decks, includes a fighter bay which can hold 6 fighters and 3 chevaliers, and other sections may include 2 quarantine cargo decks. Its full combat complement includes 6 railgun turrets, 10 heavy gun batteries, 4 light gun batteries, and 12 heavy torpedo tubes, and 4 rocket batteries. Many years ago, in the days of the Shattered Era, a ship named the Anat's Justice meted out defense for broken colonies near and around the northern edges of the Inner Pale. The shippers of the Justice were renowned for their fearlessness and courage in battle. To modern days, the stories of the Justice are filled with depiction of bravery, rash judgment, and tension filled with victory. The ship itself was said to be historic, a custom design used by a privateer by the name of Bal Ahad. When the Justice was eventually scuttled near the end of the era, its design was utilized by the preceding members of the Artificers Guild to create the Anat's Justice Dreadnought. Anat in Arun and in Kalish mythology is a powerful goddess of war and passion. Old Baal used to say that he chose the name after his beloved husband passed away during a firefight. In those moments, the man was said to have asked Baal to fight on in Anat's name to bring honor to their family, and Ahad did. Even to this day, the shippers who crew the Dreadnought often create a small shrine in memory of the original ship's captain and his love. The Anat's Dreadnought is one of the largest ships known to ply the star winds, with a crew of well over 100 hands and more than a few squadrons of battle-ready soldiers. Ship's length is quite considerable, as 73 mevrays with a width of 30 mevrays. The ship itself is more squarish in design, with a long pronounced bow section and 3 preceding short decks that slope upward near the back toward the bridge. 11 decks make up the entire depth of the ship, with the final deck being thick enough to make up 3 decks. Alright, we're not going to go into the full description like the other ones because this is a very, very large ship with lots of details. And we have another large ship to discuss, which is even more detailed, and that is the Ancestral Sovereign Carrier. It is one of the few known carrier designs out there. It's found in limited numbers. Only the great houses and wealthy powers actually have one. They're actually fought over because of how rare they are. It was developed originally in Rook, but the design is quite commonplace across the Avalon Cluster. That's because pretty much people fight for these things in Wars of Tribulation and Trials. It has 13 decks, a comprehensive battle bridge, can manage an overall fleet. The top 2 engineering deck, which can manufacture parts and pieces as necessary for fighter bays, a fully stocked medical bay along with quarantine triage and long-term care centers, fully stocked general sciences and weapon testing area in case strategy requires it, and one entire deck set aside for crewman quarters, second habitation deck set aside for fighter pilots. This thing is built to the teeth. 6 railgun turrets, 8 heavy gun batteries, 8 light gun batteries, 12 heavy torpedo tubes, and 6 rocket batteries make up its offensive capabilities. Defensive including heavy gray auto armor, heavy nanoplasmatic armor, 4 anti-rocket countermeasure turrets, and 10 anti-projectile concussive turrets. Its full fusion factor is high. It can go full fusion factor and can reach furling factor 7. That's its max traveling speed. Alright, and that's when all of its sails are unfurled. The Crown of the Stars, the Ancestral Throne Ship. Many names can be gifted to the Ancestral Sovereign Carrier, but few descriptions can begin to start to help the Luddite understand the grandeur of an Imperial war carrier. For well over 1,000 years, the ancient carriers of the great houses have acted as bases of war and forward footholds for invasion. Perhaps the oldest ship designs in the Triad, and it has created a place for itself in eras present and past. The Ancestral Sovereign is considered the preeminent carrier design outside the smaller patrol carriers designed to maintain picket defenses along the Imperial borders, or the medium-sized ones often employed by the ship-borne high fleets. Ancestral Sovereigns are often old ships, as their side and upkeep expense can only be afforded by families with great influence and power. Often a sovereign will be able to afford 1, perhaps 2 carriers at a time, but the marcher families often employing several collectively as a group for assured defense. The creation of new Ancestral Sovereign is often a lengthy and slow eradication. Some houses even go to war with the right to control an Ancestral Sovereign rather than build one. Others simply claim them when they usurp the position of a former house. Most, if not all, sovereigns for this reason are recorded selectively by the Artificer Guild, and their names are carefully remembered over the ages. Right now, there are 3 known active ones, and those are the ones controlled by the 3 sovereign houses. Alright everybody, that was tonight's episode. I understand it was a bit rushed, but we covered so much, and I want to thank you for listening tonight. We have a full season planned for the next 40 weeks, so I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll be discussing more than just lore, and we'll be talking about different writing sources. So, as the Amazons say, Vehan Shush. Spirits to you.